Well, some people say it's God that helps them get through the night. Others think it's their dog. Some people think it's music, and Bill Friedman thinks it's bodybuilding. Come on up here, Bill. Really an extraordinary story. A man with an exceptionally successful career in the law, with all the pressures attendant on a big operation, who at the age of 50 and a bit? 50 decides to change everything and emerges a mere 5 years later as one of the world's champion bodybuilders. This is Bill Friedman.
Thank you, Moses. I don't know how you people feel, but I'm awful tired after that little routine. So we're going to do a little talking and very little lifting. And what I'm going to talk about today is my vision of what aging's about. And I really see aging as a symphony. And unfortunately, we don't have the instrument yet that he could produce to help us do the symphony. But really, I see aging as a symphony, and it's a symphony that we conduct. And what is it? It's really a composition. It's a composition of our minds and our bodies. And we are the conductors, and we are the composers, and we are the arrangers. And we make of aging exactly what it is that we want to make of it. We come to it with an attitude. And the attitude that I like to describe it with is the oy vey factor. And oy vey is a Yiddish word that describes anything that ails you. And what we've got is all these various aches and pains that we can bring to the fore. We're too old, we're too tired, it's not going to do any good, it's too hard, and I'm too busy. Those are classics. And they're classics to deal and to inhibit us from doing or trying to achieve exactly what it is that we want to achieve in connection with our bodies. It's interesting because, in my view, it strikes me that we can probably achieve almost everything that we would like to achieve given certain physical characteristics. And I'm reminded of the story that Neil Armstrong told. Do you remember Neil Armstrong? He was the first man on the moon. And when he got to the moon, remember when he walked down the steps? What did he say? He said, "This is a small step for man, but a giant leap for mankind." We all remember that. Does anybody remember what he said when he got back on the lunar steps to go back into the module? Any remember? No. I'm going to tell you what he said. What he said was, "Good luck, Mr. Gorski." You remember that? And all of NASA was just taken aback by this. And when he landed back on Earth, the press gathered around him. They didn't ask him why he said, "This is a small step for man and a giant leap for mankind." What they asked him was, what is "Good luck, Mr. Gorski"? And his response was, "I can't tell you." Now, this went on for years, and he was always asked, "What did you mean?" And he refused to tell. A few years ago, 2 years ago, in Fort Myers, he was asked by the press again, "What did you mean when you said, 'Good luck, Mr. Gorski'?" And he looked at the press corps and he said, "I can tell you now. Mr. Gorski has passed on. So I'm going to tell you. When I was 16 years old, I was in my backyard throwing a ball with my brother. And my brother threw the ball into our neighbor's backyard. And I went to retrieve the ball. And when I got there, the window in the kitchen was open. And I heard a lady say to a man, our neighbors, 'You want sex? Not until man walks on the moon.' Good luck, Mr. Gorski." So you can see anything's possible. And here I was 50 years old, working 18-hour days at my law firm, out of shape, under significant stress, and really feeling very bad about myself. My relationships were askew, my body was deteriorating rapidly, and I could see just on the horizon a recipe for disaster. So I talked myself into sort of get to the gym. To at least get there. You don't have to do anything, just get there. So I did. I joined a gym. I walked into the gym, and I saw these people working out. And I said, well, I don't know what to do. I've never been in a gym. I wouldn't know how to lift one of these weights and what to do with them. So I said, okay, I better get myself a trainer before I kill myself or the people around me. And I did. I hired a trainer, and the first thing she said to me is, let me see your flexibility. I said, what? She said, touch your toes. And I looked at her and I said, listen, if God meant me to touch my toes, he would have put them on my knees. Because if you look at your arms go to the knees. So what do I want to touch my toes for? Well, needless to say, she talked me out of that, and my flexibility was just disastrous. At 50, it was disastrous. And I said, okay, we better do something about this. And so I did. I started lifting weights. And the first thing she did is she put me on a bench, and there was a barbell above the bench, and she said, lift it. And I said, that? Sure, that's easy. And 29 pounds, I couldn't lift it an inch off my chest. 29 pounds, which is, not a lot of weight. And I had all of these thoughts running through my mind. What do I need this for? This isn't going to do any good. And by the time, even if it does some good, by the time it does some good, how old am I going to be? But we prevailed. And she instilled in me the motivation, the trainer did, instilled in me a little bit of motivation to work a little harder, try it a little longer, see what happens. And we progressed. I was able to lift the bar. I was able to lift the dumbbells. And something strange starts to happen. You start to feel a little better about yourself. You get up in the morning, and you're still fighting with yourself. What do I need this for? Do I want to go? It's 5:30 a.m. Do I really want to go to the gym right now? And that's one thought that I have. And the other thought is, yeah, you better do it. And those are conflicting thoughts. And those thoughts continue to conflict. And at one day, one side is dominant, and the other side is subordinate. And the other day, one side is subordinate, and the other side is dominant. And the key is, how do we figure out? And what tools can we use in order to move us forward so that the goals that we're really trying to achieve and our thought process to try to achieve those goals becomes more dominant? And one of the things we don't want to do in our attitude, and I'll let you read this because it's quite interesting, and if you can't read it, I'll join you. We have attitudes, right? You get up in the morning, I cannot pee, I cannot see, I cannot chew, I cannot, oh my God, what can I do? My memory shrinks, my hearing stinks, no sense of smell, I look like hell. My mood is bad, can you tell? My body's drooping, have trouble pooping. The golden years have come at last. The golden years can kiss my ass. And that's all a question of attitude. So we get rid of the oy vey factor. We get rid of all of these potential attitudinal problems that we can bring into our minds and into our thoughts. And really, at the end, only you can stop you. You have thoughts, and you have feelings. Feeling is, I'm angry. I'm depressed. I'm getting old, and I'm feeling useless. I'm feeling as if my self-esteem is eroding. All right, those are feelings. But intertwined with those feelings are what? Thoughts. Feelings like anger comes with a thought. Now, whether the thought precedes it, or whether the thought is intertwined with it is debatable. But let's for the moment assume that the thought that you have precedes the feeling that you have. The question is, you feel anger, you feel some depression, you feel sadness. You may even feel love. But can you capture the thought behind the feeling? That's really the process. So if you can capture the thought behind the feeling, then you can begin to deal with the feeling and the thought. And what you do is when you have those thoughts, you then take a judicial approach to them. What do I mean by a judicial approach? Well, the thought is, it's 5:30 in the morning, I'm not getting out of bed. I'm not going to this gym. Well, you can sit back and you can say, okay, that's the thought. Let's take a judicial approach to this thought. Let's act as if we were cross-examining the thought. I'm going to be both the defense counsel and the prosecutor. And I'm going to examine that thought to see what the elements of it are for myself, and to try to understand what it is that it's saying to me, and cross-examine it. And hopefully at the end, I'm going to come up with a reasoned decision. And that reasoned decision will most likely be what's in your best interest. And so we have to try to capture, as we have feelings, try to capture those thoughts that are associated with the feelings that inhibit us from doing what we think is really important for us. How do we get out of this inertia that we're in? And so here I am, 50, then 50, today 63, just about 64, in the gym, and I'm getting a little stale. You know, I'm lifting the weights, and I'm moving around, and I'm doing cardio, and I'm starting to think about nutrition. Who thought about nutrition? Nutrition to me was to run downstairs to the cafeteria and buy whatever was on the tray that I could grab to run back to my office to make sure that I got the next agreement done or the next merger and acquisition done. That's what nutrition was to me. And suddenly people are sort of saying to me, hey, nutrition is really important. As a matter of fact, in the bodybuilding business, it's about 75%. And your exercise and your weights are probably about 25%. Because what's the goal? The goal is to get your body fat down. When I compete, my body fat goes down to about 6.3%. And I'm standing before you somewhere around 12 to 13% now. So nutrition becomes a goal in and of itself. And it's a challenging goal, because it's much easier to run and grab the fries than it is to run and grab a sweet potato. It's much easier to use the white rice than it is to use brown rice. Because what we want to do in our nutritional approach is complex carbs, not simple carbs. And what we want to do is avoid saturated fats almost entirely. So what are good fats? Almonds, walnuts, blueberries, tons of blueberries. I don't know if any of you have seen the movie The Bodybuilder and I. That's a movie that my son made, and it won all the awards. Hot Dog, Best Canadian Feature Film Documentary. And he made the movie about what? Well, I'll tell you the little story. He comes to me as I'm getting ready for my last bodybuilding competition, the last one I had, which was 2007. And he says to me, Dad, I want to make a movie about you training for a bodybuilding competition. I looked at him and I said, Brian, nobody's going to want to watch that. Who cares how much I sweat? Who cares what my t-shirt looks like? And you know, I've got ADD, but how much attention do I really need? And he said, Dad, don't worry about it. I'll worry about that. You just have to play along with me. I said, okay, I'll do it. 3 months go on, and he's filming away and doing what he's got to do. And I get a call from a writer at Maclean's magazine. Mr. Friedman, would you mind if I did an interview with you? I said, about what? He said, about the upcoming movie. I said, upcoming movie? Which one? He's the one your son is making. Sure. And he comes in, he sits down and says, why are you doing this? I said, why am I doing this? Not because I think I'm going to look better on the camera than I look in a mirror. I'm doing this because my son asked me to. He said, you know, may not go very well for you. I said, what do you mean? He says, didn't he tell you what this is really all about? I said, no. Well, why don't you tell me what it's really all about? And he said to me, Mr. Friedmann, what this really is all about is about how he feels about you. And I said, uh-oh. And the night comes where he calls me up and he says, Dad, I want you to see the film before it shows at Hot Docs. And I said, okay. And he comes over to the house and he puts the movie on and I watch this movie. And let me tell you that I learned for the first time about parent-child relationships. And what I learned were two important things. Children have difficulty telling you how they really feel. They have difficulty telling their parents how they really feel. And my son had excruciating difficulty telling me how he felt about me, and the fact that I was absent, as far as he was concerned, for most of his life. The only way he could do that was with a camera on his shoulder. And essentially, what I learned was that I wasn't hearing when he was saying things to me, and even if I heard it, I would become very defensive. What do you mean? You're not right. Well, Dad, you shouldn't feel that way. Look what you've got. Why do you feel that way? And at the end of the movie, I can only tell you this, that the movie starts off with him saying that we have no relationship. And at the end of the movie, he sort of looks at me and he says, I think I can begin to treat my father like a man instead of what he's always been to me, which is someone that I really didn't like. And let me take this just one step further to show you what the impact, the impact on me was terrible. And let me tell you how bad it was, because I strut around in my posing trunks for the whole movie. And if you think that's funny, let me tell you what happens to me when I show up at the Court of Appeal. And this is a true story. I show up at the Court of Appeal, 3 judges. The chairperson of this Court of Appeal is a woman judge. I won't tell you her name because somebody here may know her, and I'll be before her again. And she looks at me, and there's a little smile in the corner of her mouth. And I stand up and start making the submissions. And she's still smiling. And I'm saying, oops, is there something about my fly? Is there something about what I'm saying? Because this doesn't seem like it's going very good for my client. And I decided right there and then that I would confront it. And I said to her, Your Honor, is it something about the way I'm putting these submissions forward? Because I'm trying not to make them humorous. And she looks at me and she says, Mr. Friedmann, I can't get you in your other robes out of my mind. So it wasn't great. Here's my son. He makes this wonderful movie. I end up in the Court of Appeal, and all she sees is my posing trunks. But it also had another effect, and I'm going to share this with you as well. The other effect it had is I did a morning radio interview, both Brian and I did. And it was CBC morning show. And the interviewer, whose name I won't mention right now, the interviewer comes out as we were going into the studio, and he comes up to me and he hugs me. And I looked at him and I said, uh-oh, he must really feel bad for me. And he then looks at me and says, Bill, I saw the movie last night getting ready for this interview. And I said, okay. And he said, I want you to know, I hadn't spoken to my son in 18 years. And last night after the movie, I called him, and we're having dinner next week. So notwithstanding all of the reaction that I had, which is how are people going to see me when my son says, you know, I hate you, the result of it has been very positive. And I thought I'd share that with you because at the end of the day, parent-child relationships, if you can find a way, one of you find a way in which to reach out and to hear and listen, I think there's a great chance to restore relationships that have gone askew, no matter how old we are. The other thing I'd like to share with you is let's not take the easy way out. Let's not take the pills that are prescribed, because if you look at this little cartoon, all these doctors were testing little pills, aging pills, and they say, well, they really work too well, because now look at us. So the hard way out may very well be the only real way out. Because at the end of the day, when we look at ourselves and we look at how we are approaching our aging, the music that we're going to make and the arrangements we make will be the music we play. And one of the things we try not to do is to keep repeating the same thing over and over again, whether it's in the bodybuilding competition basis or anywhere else, because if you're not happy with the results, then doing the same thing has a degree of insanity attached to it, because if you do the same thing and you expect to have a different result, it isn't going to happen. And if you watch people in a gym, they'll keep doing the exact same thing every day. And then they'll come up to me and say, Bill, how come I'm not achieving what I want to achieve? And the answer is, change the way you're doing it. I think it's really important to establish some tools to get us to where we want to go. And one of the things I like to tell people is, we really want to try to listen to ourselves, to listen to what we're saying, and then to approach what we're saying, as I said before, in a judicial fashion. Cross-examine what you're saying to yourself so that you can understand all of the elements of it. And then hopefully we can come up with a very reasoned decision. And hopefully you can hear what I hear. And what I hear in my mind is the symphony of aging can be extremely productive and very viable. It really, it is what we make of it. At the end of the day, I think what's really important as I reach 65 is to follow our goals and not our feelings necessarily. If we establish goals of ourselves, if your goal is to get into the gym and you've got feelings that seem to inhibit you from doing that, follow your goals. Whoops. I think there's one missing here. And what I was going to say to you at the end is that when we get on a scale, what's really important is to weigh what matters, and what matters is our attitude. What matters is our relationships. And what matters is how we feel about ourselves, our self-esteem, not how much we weigh. If all of the other aspects are taken care of, what we weigh will take care of itself. Thank you.
Thank you for that inspirational talk, Bill, but I still wanted you to take your clothes off. If you look at page 32, you just get a little hint of what Bill looks like, but I've got the full body shot here. And I was wanting to ask you, Bill, this little square bit here, where does that come from?
That's an oblique.
I'll say.
Yeah.
It's unbelievably developed. That's amazing. That's amazing.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Bill.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Check it out.